No, I love those guys. That was a good time. I'm Scotty Bevill, by the way. Some of you may know me, some of you may not. I'm going to ask you guys, this is a little bit, I just did this talk a couple of times in the past recently in Denver where we had an exercise that goes with it. So we don't have the issue now. Those of you that go to the Path to Agility's website, and you go into the speaker section of the website, next to my little plaque that's got that oil painting fake picture of what I don't actually look like on there, there's going to be a link there following in the next couple of days that will actually download the document we're going to cover. The reason why I don't do this in the talk is because that document tends to ping on some things that you don't necessarily talk about at parties because it's about you, and it's about me, and it's about every single person in this room. And we have a tendency to believe that we are such unique creatures that whenever something is good, everybody has it. And whenever something is bad, I'm the only one. And we're going to talk about today why that's not true. And we're going to talk about the 7 hidden impediments about great leadership. And how many people were here last year when Christopher and I basically talked about insanity over here with long hair and leadership over here with a PhD, right? Okay, so this is kind of an extension of some of that work. When we work with mentees as mentors, we go through that awareness space. I won't ask you guys to recite like the 5 words we use, but I'll remind you that intention, awareness, confront, integration, and contribution are the axioms at which we do our work. Today is about awareness. We're going to talk about a horizontal, agile folks, yeah? Everybody in the room an agile person or aspiring agile person or recovering agile people? Understood. So I'm a recovering agile person and I'm addicted to agility thinking, and that's, I think, where leadership comes into play for me. So we're going to talk about 7 hidden impediments in self-awareness. So if you were here last year, this is in that awareness category. And this is really when we talk about awareness and we talk about transparency, it's not, let me come in and tell you about all my health problems so I can be on your team and we can be effective agile people. Okay, that's not transparency, that's psychosis, and HR can handle it for you. Transparency really is about transparency and process, right? People, processes, and tools. We want to talk about transparency and how we work and not focus so much on what we do. That's where our how people come in. Well, as project managers, we've been the how kids for 20 years. I know most of you have only been around for 5 years. I'm the old guy, but that's okay. The point being is that when we talk about the horizontal agile team, there's still a vertical. And that vertical is where we remain moral. It's where we remain ethical. It's still accountability. It's just personal accountability, not authoritative accountability. This is where you'll hear Christopher talk about responsibility over accountability. The reality is that there's very much accountability. So is there a right and wrong? Absolutely, but only if we agree. Because if you say, well, it's right for me to do these types of things, like driving on the left side of the road. Notice I didn't say driving on the wrong side of the road. That would require an agreement. So in some places, driving on this side of the road and putting the steering wheel on this side of the car is perfectly normal. That's the right thing to do. In other parts of the world, that's not true. So if you and I don't agree on what's right and wrong, then we're not there yet. And maybe I would work better on this team where we agree what's right and wrong. Now we're going to talk about choice. We're going to talk about decisions, something we brought up last year. And specifically in the space of the fact that you're always at choice. Every second of your life. Choice is not a state you achieve, it's a state you are. The question is, at what mindset are you making your choices? Because that's probably leading to the outcomes you're getting, desirable, undesirable, conscious or unconscious. We'll get into that. So some of you may have seen this slide before. If you haven't, that's okay. We'll talk about the outlook of chaos. What is chaos? Many, many causes, many, many effects, and I can tie a lot of the causes and effects together. If I have many, many causes and many, many effects, I don't have disorder. I have not chaos, but I have disorder, one order of magnitude to no productivity. Lots of causes, lots of effects. Some of us have worked for those companies. Some of us have worked for companies where we have implicit causes and implicit effects. That means that I know exactly what's going to happen, completely predictable. Those of you that have been in insurance a long time, they're like, I'm not telling you nothing, buddy. I know I'm in Columbus. Okay, anybody been in red insurance before? No, when I talk about insurance, I'm talking not about insurance. I'm talking about federated environments. I worked in the federal government, the state government, many, many years. In those environments, there are things that are just true, whether you agree it's right or wrong or not. Fortunately, if you have a choice, you can always go get another job. By all means, door's right over there. And since the government pays you so much money, who wants to leave that job? That's why I'm a speaker. But tried and true says that we're going to work on teams and focus on risk management. Risk management is a high priority on my team. Predictability is a high priority on my team. Prescriptions, waterfall versus agile. I love when people say waterfall versus agile because agile is not a prescription, but we're going to compare it to a description or a prescription as if it is. And we're going to talk about what I mean by that. Then you get into linear, bias, and repetitive. How many of you recognize this as the old world of work? And this is a new world of work. And managers go, this helps me get promoted because I don't lie to my boss, and this means I have to trust you, and you know what, sometimes, no thanks. It just depends on where we are in a state of maturity as an organization. So we talk about cyclic, we talk about team boundaries, team agreements, and we use facilitation to achieve them. So what impediments are we talking about? These guys right here. We're going to talk about subjective reality, we're going to talk about expectations, competition, context, inquiry over advocacy, because advocacy is a big problem. Advocacy is one of my problems. This is not based on some college research that was done by a bunch of PhDs. This was me spending 25 years working as a leader, trying to be a boss, trying to be a brother, sometimes trying to be a sister, because my niece turns to me like a sister. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm like, just go watch Edward, leave me alone. But we're going to talk about status quo value and why that gets in our way sometimes. So I want to talk specifically about vocabulary. It starts with knowing you. Not me knowing you, you knowing you. So it starts with you, it starts with me, it starts with us, it starts with ourselves, it starts with whatever thing you know is you alone in a dark room or on a golf course by yourself, competing against yourself, for yourself, and it's no one else's business. And we're going to talk about how we allow that to erode us. So the first thing I want to talk about is agreements. How many of you are glasses half full? How many of you are glasses half empty? How many of you raised your hand for glasses half full because you thought it was the right answer? What if I told you that water was valuable? And the fact that the glass is half full or the glass is half empty is just a perception that you have, and that's perfectly fine. If the glass is half full, am I going to respond to it differently than if it's half empty? Who said yes? They're like, no, I just whispered that. If we had a whole semester, I'd get you talking, I promise. But what happens is that I absolutely respond differently because if I think the glass is half empty, I'm in a scarcity mindset. I'm afraid it's going to go away. And so what do? I typically try and covet it so badly that I spilled it. Now we're all screwed anyway. But if I see that the glass is half full, or I've got this little jug over here that's even more half full, I pretty much lower the value of this. So if we can agree that the glass is half full or the glass is half empty is something we want to be aware of, but not use it to drive our choices, then we can just agree that water is valuable. And I'd like to maximize the amount of water, the distribution of water, the management of water, the recreation of water, the sanitation of water, because that's what actually matters. And if you notice, all those things I just said are actually the sustainability factors associated to water, not the value by perception based on evaluation of quantity or what we call scarcity and abundance. So we got to make agreements. How many of you have a justification in your office called culture? That's just our culture. Yeah, I love that one. I'm like, really? So that guy squealing over there to his boss that's how you guys measure excellence? Because that's what I saw culture defined on the internet as. Culture is the standard by which we measure excellence. So if you see negative behavior or undesired behavior or unconscious behavior or whatever evaluator you want to put on it, and you call that your culture, you, ma'am or sir, are justifying. Well, good news. We're all justified. Now what? Let's move on. You're justified. I'm justified. Doesn't matter if I like what you did or not. We're very horizontal. Free will, right? That's horizontal. The vertical of this is what do you value? Well, I'm organic. I value water very greatly. But because it's in such an abundance, I don't wake up every morning and go, make sure we have our water for the day. No, I wake up and I go, Susie better not be in office first and sit in my chair. Because our environments very much drive what our values are. Well, we as the project team leaders, what's our responsibility as coaches and scrum masters and directors and managers and leaders and peers and brothers and sisters and moms and dads? Our job is to create an environment. And so if you're finding that you guys are lacking in shared values, stop looking at the people and evaluating the people and ask yourself, what contribution do I have to this environment that is allowing the manifestation of these values, the things that we think are important, we need to talk about right now? Your questions will start to change. So I'm going to give you insights here to this because this is going to get a little heavy. I'm going to be frank with you. For an hour-long talk, this is chucked in the deep end and no floaties kind of thing. There is a worksheet that I told you would be available to you, and we're going to talk about this. And we're going to start back up here. And the reason I mention agreements up front is because we're going to agree right now. We're going to make an agreement to discuss the context of what we're going to go through today, and stay here and stay with me. And I'll try and segment it so it's not so much chunking and it's a little bit more of a, when you go out in the hallway, you don't think, good Lord, no wonder he told us about second lunch. That guy's out of his mind. So what we're going to do is go through this a little bit. The second page of this document, I should have took you up on your offer, Tony, or I'm going to lose weight. The second half of this document is the reason why I make it available to you, because each one of these segments has a question that's going to ask you to ask yourself about a situation. Sometimes it might be, staying present. Have you ever had anxiety about a future problem? If I asked you that question, half this room is going to be like, whatever, man, I don't have anxiety. You're an idiot. I'm a narcissist. I'm project manager. I'm an agile coach. And the truth is, on the other side of your brain, you're going, oh man, I got anxiety right now because I think you're going to call on me. So yeah, anxiety is real. So the answer to that is, of course I've had anxiety. The question is, am I mature enough to admit it to myself? Can I take a note? Can I revisit it? Will I revisit it? And can I make a different choice tomorrow? And the idea at the end of this talk is to be able to self-perturbate or to perturb yourself into catalyzing intrinsic change. Because until you are self-aware and whole, the illusion that you can create self-organizing systems is just a magic trick, hoping someone will pay you to do just that. Self-awareness is the beginning of leadership, and every great leader is highly self-aware. You think Steve Jobs ever stopped and explained why fonts are so important, or did he just demand that they were the most important thing ever? Absolutely. You want that passion. I want to know what yours is. I want to know what yours is. And more importantly, I want you to know what it is and live in an integrated environment that allows you to express that passion without fear of judgment, etc. And unfortunately, we've spent 12 years of education prior to college teaching you to do just the opposite of all that. So we're going to move through that. Leadership agreements and expectations, making agreements, self-awareness, principles and values. This is that vertical we talked about. If we're all horizontal at free will, then I want to be around a bunch of people who also agree that it's not right to hit your neighbor. I also want to agree that it's okay that CYA email is actually just an e-discovery liability. It's not actually a shield for you at work. Please stop sending CYA email. I got IT guys watching Time to Live on that thing because if an attorney picks it up, the word defect is unreasonably harmful, not a bug. Please stop using defect in email. This is where we get into that agreement on the vertical. If we're not in agreement on the vertical of principles and values, what kind of a manager do I have to be to get you in line? I have to be a fear monger. Pay your taxes or go to jail. You will do this work or I will write you up. But if we start and we agree, and I go, look, can you agree that walking across the tops of these chairs while you do your talk is not considered best practice right now? If we can agree on that, then I don't need a rule that says don't. You can just trust that I won't. Besides, I'd probably break my neck anyway. I don't have the right shoes on. Not because I wouldn't try. Leadership is not setting expectations. Project managers, how good are you at setting expectations? How many people are really good at making decisions? Do I smell like trick questions? Yeah, good answer. I got one person that was like, he said trick question. But no, absolutely, we all want to be great at making decisions. But again, is the decision the problem? No. It's whether or not I've associated loss with the thing I didn't choose and whether or not I'm making that choice out of anxiety. And we're going to talk about that. Because when I'm at choice, Agile says, choose A, man. If it tastes like garbage, spit it out, throw it away. Don't tell your aunt and eat the pickles. They're better. And if you're from the Midwest, deep fry them because that's bestest. I disagree. Chicken and waffles, man, Indiana. Don't ask. But legitimately, what we're talking about when it comes to decision and choice is choice means I can choose again, and I'm free to choose again. So I feel powerful in my choice. If I've got to make a decision between this or that, it means that if I choose this, this has gone away. That's scarcity. That's the glass is half empty. It's the same mental state. So what kind of choices do you think I make? I don't. Hey, can you guys have a meeting on Tuesday? I know it's Wednesday, but can we get together next Tuesday to talk about this so that I can delay the anxiety at least that long? Then when we get into a meeting, maybe I can convince my wife to fall down and I got to run to the hospital and we can delay it till the next Thursday after that. And we just play these delay tactics, but what are we really delaying? Something we don't want to face. I want to face it, and I want to create an environment that's safe for us to face it. And that's what I want you guys to do as well. So leadership is not setting expectations or evaluation or rules and regulations or authoritative. What is all this stuff here? All this about down to here, from decisions up. It's project management. Who said it? Okay, you guys should give him one of these fancy cups, man. These are great. I got to get a box of them. But yeah, this is management. I have to manage you because what? I have a desired outcome that must occur within a specific standard deviation. So if you're manufacturing iPhones, please have these things in place. Or I'm going to get an iPhone with bunny ears out of this guy, which may not be bad. It's not up to me. That's up to you. But yeah, we put management practices in place when our priority is different, right? How many people here are safety first? Safety first. That's a big environment, right? Safety first. I got to have safety. I don't work in a construction zone. I'm sitting at a desk with a computer. And I've licked the cord before. It doesn't actually electrocute you. Safety's not first in this environment. Now, if I find a couple of developers that heard about standing desks, right, that's a new phenomenon. Fitness kids, right? I come into the office and this chair's still there, cubicle's still there, and they're standing up on top of their desk. And I said, what are you doing? They said, standing desk, man. It's the newest thing on Facebook. I saw it. Okay, there's a safety consideration. That didn't really happen. It's just a joke. Okay. But legitimately, what we're talking about again in this safety-first culture is what do we value? So is this wrong? No. It just might be unnecessary, and that becomes the key. If I value this for what it provides because I know what it provides, and I value this because it provides what I know it provides, then I need to know which one do we want. If I'm really thirsty, I want less water in the glass because I drank it, not as a start, not as a source. The other side, I want a full glass. So water is valuable. So do I want to increase or decrease the state of water? Then I'm going to determine which one of these I want to do. Because if we're decreasing water, I want to do it at a predictable rate. If we're increasing water, by all means, go and build me the greatest damn water thing in the world. And give me a great desalinator, and we'll just all be in abundance of water. We'll get into that. So I'm going to go over to the worksheets, and I'm going to talk about objective and subjective reality. How many of you in the room hate Monday? Keep your hands up. They bought one. I'm excited. With your other hand, how many of you slack off on Friday? Put your hands together if that's true. You might be your own worst enemy. What if Mondays suck because I only have a 4-day work week and I blew off 2 days of work to be done on the first day I come back? Mondays are just an idea. Imagine a world, if you will, for a moment, where Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday were never invented. Imagine what kind of a world we would live in if Monday was actually called Integrity Day. Hey, what are you doing on Integrity Day? Oh, man, you had to ask. I'm going to go to confession. Makes up for the, Saturday, party day. What if I told you it was Contribution Day? Wednesday was Contribution Day. Do you think we'd have more of a gifting society? Do you think the words we use every day drive our mindsets and our unconscious behavior, our habits? Yeah. Please don't go to work and say, hey, today's Integrity Day, boss. You're not allowed to talk. We know you. Scotty said so. Don't do that. But imagine in those spaces and say, what if Monday was Integrity Day? What if Tuesday was Gratification Day or Gratitude Day? Right now, Sunday's more of a gratitude day if you're a family-oriented person. Notice I didn't say church. Apparently that's a negative public thing to talk about. I love all of you. I don't care what you believe or what you think, as long as it's what exactly you want to be doing at that time and you choose to do it without anybody getting in your way. Somebody said, well, that's spirituality. I'm like, yeah, that's just an observation. But by all means, go be that. So subjective reality, how many of you say this is more, this is better? How many of you are going to be asked to evaluate my talk in about an hour? Absolutely. And what are you going to say? This guy's trash. Jeff's going to be like, I used to work with him. I know that he's like super trash. This is all fronting. But the reality when we come to the end of the day is you're being asked to evaluate all the time. Is the glass full? Is it less? Is it empty? Is this more? Is it better? And subjective reality simply says the only way Monday is bad is if we agree. How many of you work with somebody who hates Mondays and you avoid them because you don't want to freaking hear about another bad Monday? Yeah. You go and you say, I'm just trying to have a good first day of work. Remember when you were broke and you got this job and how excited you were on Monday? What happened to that guy? He goes, oh, I got deliverables. I got out of training and somebody changed my job. I was no longer a trainee. Now I've got deliverables. Now Mondays suck. That's what happens. It's all relative to the observer. So if we can change the way we observe it, we can capitalize on it. We can share reality. And I want to work with you already because you got the same problem I do. And here's the bad news. I'm one of those bad Monday guys, but when I'm around people that don't tolerate it, I'm able to self-correct. This is an important fact of a leader. Are you open to feedback from your peers? I have personally failed this horribly. And when you're not, and you don't allow yourself to receive, and you're not taking feedback, you're truly in this control cycle management mindset. Your people may be like, look, we've observed this about you for 10 years, man. We just know you're like that. So why didn't you tell me? They're like, have you ever tried to tell yourself something? It's that awareness of being able to receive feedback. Very valuable lesson in that about subjective reality. Is subjective reality wrong or bad? No. Sometimes I want to know whether or not there's more water in here or more water in there. You can't come to me and say, well, that's subjective. The amount of water is irrelevant. I went to Scotty's talk. Okay, well, in certain scenarios, that's not true. So I'm not asking you to choose between subjective or objective. I'm asking you to be aware of when you're in which state so that you're not self-deceiving and having outcomes that surprise you. Sometimes those outcomes are good. I acknowledge that. But in the case of the Mondays, and specifically, we say Mondays are bad. Another perspective, it says, imagine for a moment you're on a delivery team that deploys product every Tuesday. Right, Leonard? Every Tuesday, we're going live. That's going to be a great idea. How would your days be affected if every single coworker in the office the day before you're going live with product does this? What do you want? You know it's Monday. And you know how much it costs me to replace the heels of my shoes because I walk like this one every 7 days? So think about your delivery day and the mindsets at which your office is participating in, because when you got 100 people all around you, hating every moment of every day, or at least quietly, that's going to impact the way you feel about the very next day, which is supposed to be what? The most valuable day of the week. Look, Ma, new stuff. So I don't want bad Mondays, especially if I have a team delivering on Tuesday, because of the impact of that team. That's the awareness. So now all of a sudden, you guys are going to go in and say, well, Monday's terrible, but I'm not going to tell my dev team because I know that makes them mad. Well, I'm asking you to step up your game because I want you to have a better day, not just other people. That's going to be an important one. So let's take a look at competition and leadership. How many people have heard the term co-opetition? Yeah? In my industry, co-opetition, I think, was a clever way for people who don't really like each other to talk to each other about liking each other when you guys are around. Co-opetition is a myth. I don't even know what that means. So I will tell you that some people have very explicit definitions about this thing. I personally think it's confusing as all get out. Here's what I know. I know that if there's one job up for grabs, because all of you have promotions going on inside your space, but there are many people who are like you trying to get that job, that naturally creates a competition. Here's the counterintuitive thing. If I fight for that job, and I'm fighting you for that job, and you're our manager while we're fighting over that job, even though we're cleverly fighting over it like this, right? My hey friend became the what? You walk by the guy in the hallway and you say hey all the time, but you don't actually know his name, but for some reason you always say hey to the same damn guy. Yeah, that's your hey friend. Stop one day and be like, hey man, what's your name? Watch him go. You're my hey friend. Why are you asking me my name? Then you're going to find out about me and my halo effect will go away, and then I'm going to find out I don't really like you. Just be my hey friend. I get so tangential. But when we're in competition going through the hallway, and Tony and I, let's say, are going for the same job, and we know we're going for the same job, and you're observing he and I have anxiety and a little bit of a combative nature about the same job, are you going to want more of that in your office? No. So imagine if I walked in, I'm like, look, man, if it really is a choice, and you're not clear on who you want, pick him. Most people here are like, right. That's never going to happen. But the reality is this, if you truly are not clear as a manager in which one of us you want to have that job, I'm not the one that wants to work for you right now. You're not mature enough as a leader. Don't say the second half out loud. And what do you observe now? Now you observe leadership in me and you go, you know what? No, I want that guy right there. And they say, why? I said, because you were willing to sacrifice yourself for your team. Or I'm a master manipulator and I study psychology, but okay, we'll go with your version. But ultimately what we're saying here is that what he observes every day, Marcus Aurelius actually coined this phrase, and unfortunately Hannibal Lecter made it famous, right? He said we start every day with, coveting the things that we see, right? We begin with coveting the things we see every day, I think is the quote. The truth is, if you see leadership all the time, you're going to want more abundance of leadership all the time. If you see competition all the time, what happens is we start to fight over this job, and eventually we Tommy boy this thing. You guys know what that means, right? You know, he loves the biscuit so much, and all of a sudden it's just a pile of crumbs all over the table because he just wanted it. He was talking about a sale in the movie Tommy Boy, and I do that. Oh, look, we got one. Let me do this to it until it doesn't exist, and then blame the customer. But reality is, Tony and I are doing this, and you're observing this. You're not going to want this behavior in your office. And ultimately, our competition is starving out our ability to actually grow, and eventually nobody gets the promotion. So I'm going to take a self-perspective and be like, hey, if you don't know, I'm not your guy. But if you do know, let me tell you, I'm a little narcissistic, kind of brilliant. You know, so if you're sure about me too. Okay. Absolutely. But Marcus Aurelius also said, he said, you have the power over your mind, not the outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. No matter what you witness, no matter what you observe, some of you have lost loved ones, had car accidents. Some of you have been through some of the most horrific things that a person could imagine. You're still here. I saw a post one day that said, you know, I'm gonna tell you I'm 40 years old. I think I'm 41, but we're gonna go with 40. I saw a post one day that actually had 30 in it. But what it has said is that, you know, I have 100% success in surviving bad days for 40 years. I know some of you are like, crap, I can't complain about having a bad day anymore. Me neither. But the truth is that we do have 100% success in surviving, and you're all here. So congratulations to everybody for surviving as many bad days as you've had, which means we can survive another. And the only reason you did is right here. The power of the human mind. I simply chose to survive the day, and I chose not to quit and give up. Fundamentally, that's true. How many of you are agile folks that understand that context is now? How many people have heard context is king? How many have heard content is king? And marketers say, no, content is king. I'm like, not if it's irrelevant to me. You give me all the content in the world, 20% new and improved. I'm like, new and improved over what? Is it new or improved? They go, well, new bottle, improved formula. So, okay. Then what? Dirt? This is laundry detergent. It freaking better be 20% better than dirt. So make sure that you're clear and accurate in your descriptions. Context is now. Context has to do with relevance. Do you want to build the requirements that are delivered, or do you want to build the thing that's relevant to your user? How many people think relevant to the user? Agilists. How many people think requirements? Nobody here is trying to get promoted? Yeah, see, as soon as you change what your priority is, all of a sudden your behavior starts to change. That's what I thought. So how do you get promoted by making a customer happy? Well, then my business needs to value the same thing I do. That's alignment. That's context. That's relevant to us now. Shared reality, shared clarity, shared trust and courage. These are byproducts of these. If you and I share reality, and I think I'm great. If you don't think I'm great, but we have a personality conflict, we've learned to work well together, you think we're ever going to get here? Hell no. We might get here, where I eventually go, look, dude, you and I got to talk. That's how us white folks talk. I love your laugh, by the way. That's what got my attention. I was trying to make him laugh. But ultimately, once we use these to get the byproduct of this, then we want to build our team, and only then can we build our team, because if I don't build our team on a fundamental layer of trust, which is usually, of course we have trust. I'm going to put that under here and never talk about it again. Of course we have courage. I'm going to put that under here and never talk about it again. So really fundamentally understanding how to get this trust and courage out of this reality and clarity are what our facilitators are doing. This is what our Scrum Masters are doing. This is what you guys are doing. My job is to build these two things because I know those will appear. And when these appear, this is natural. Tuckman said so 40 years ago. Nobody disagrees with that guy. But in your context, I'm going to give you guys something you can write down if I got note takers in the room. In your context, when you speak, please be clear and be accurate. So I want clarity to be complete and accurate. What do I mean by that? How many people here have been a functional manager prior to the Agile phenomenon and then today went, I've been Agile longer than Agile's been in existence? Okay, how many of you just been a functional manager? And the second part I just made up because that's what I did. Absolutely. When you guys were functional managers, how many times have you ever told somebody, anybody, any parents in the room? How many times have you ever just said, hey, get in here? I don't care if you were giving me allowance. My buddy just went, dude, you are so done. How many of you have a boss that, or were a boss that had said, hey guys, can you come to my office at 2? If Tony and I are having coffee in the morning and you walk up to me and say, can you come to my office at 2? Do you think I went, yeah, HR called him about my raise? No, I was like, did you tell him about his daughter, man? I'm going to think of the worst thing I ever did. That didn't actually happen either. That's a joke. But I'm going to think of the worst thing that I could ever think of in my whole life right now. So if I had a leader that said, hey, can you come in my office at 2 because I heard from HR about something you're going to like, I might still think, I wonder if he accepts me with his daughter. Probably not, though. I'm going to think HR. That's probably about money. Accuracy and completeness, folks, because not everyone that works for you, not everyone that works next to you, and not everyone that works above you is going to practice personal accountability and responsibility 24/7. And so I'm not saying that you are responsible for the way they feel or respond. I'm asking you to be aware. Remember, today's Awareness Day. I'm asking you to be aware that people respond to a lack of information or ambiguity. If we're going to demand a lack of ambiguity in product requirements and product visioning and understanding, please provide a lack of ambiguity in what we're doing as a team, because that's going to build this. If I give you clarity and transparency in me, and you give me clarity and transparency in you, now I'm building cross-functional teams because everybody's willing to do a little bit more than their job description. This is all the power of my brain, the way I think. And I recognize that maybe you're having a bad day. And I say, you know what, come by my office. You know, my wife made cookies. My wife didn't make cookies. My wife, was a different person. But my point is that if you came by and I told you what the result of that was going to be, you could then determine whether or not that's bad or good. But we do have a tendency, because of the way we're raised, because of the way we're conditioned, that if I hear something like that, I may not. Unless you and I have got a track record of, look, this guy's called me to his office at 20 times at 2 o'clock, and you know 2 o'clock means raise. If he tells you to come into his office at 9:30, you're done. And if it's Friday, I'll stop by on Sunday to see what you're doing because I got to go to work on Integrity Day tomorrow. So you find patterns and you learn patterns. Well, some of those patterns emerge. Some of those patterns happen over time because I've worked with you for 5 years, let's say. So I start to have expectations of you. Well, that sounds reasonable, right? Let me tell you how it actually kills your business. We talk about changing our questions, being complete and accurate. What do you want? What do I want? What do we want? How do you know? Certainty favors the uninformed. How many of you ever heard, the more I learn about something, the more I realize I don't know anything? Yeah. But then when I say certainty favors the uninformed, some expert goes, what? I'm like, but you agree with the other statement that says exactly the same thing, right? Well, I never thought of it that way. I was like, I know, because you were certain that I'm insane. The truth is that certainty favors the uninformed. So every time you feel like you are just certain about something, that is an opportunity right now for you to stop, look again, and find out if you're actually certain or if you're about to get blindsided by an assumption. This is opportunity for you. So when you say, how many heard a speech pattern that said, what I know right now is this? Okay, that's a lot of passion, buddy. But I wasn't there when you figured out what you know, so can we talk about how you know? And the wrong response is, well, I know you. Can we talk? Personal experience. But that's important for you guys to take a look at that. Inquiry over advocacy. And we'll get into expectations. Let's take a look over here, and you can go through some of this competition and context. When we talked about earlier with setting expectations, I missed a little piece I want to bring back. When I set expectations on you based on past behaviors, how capable do you feel of changing my opinion of you? You come to work late for a year. I don't fire you because, well, I like your sister, right? I told you guys, sometimes you never know what's going to come out of my mouth. The point is that I don't fire you. But I don't expect you to be here on time. So I start planning my meetings different to try and allocate for your tardiness, right? If you came to work and went, you know what, man, I turned over a new leaf. I'm going to be Johnny on the spot every day. Doesn't matter. Am I going to believe you? So my expectations of you actually become an impediment to you being able to grow. So when you have expectations based on past behavior, if you truly believe that person's not going to change, do them a favor and stop working with them. Let them off the hook, man. Let them go. Hey, maybe we can do something different. You know, you can come to the meeting whenever you want. As long as I'm getting the stuff I need from you, we'll make that a team thing. We'll go, whatever your alternative is. But for your own sake, let go of the expectation. Because that thinking limits you, and eventually it's worked so well with you. Now I have expectations of you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and heaven forbid one of you becomes my child. Because then you're never going to change, because I've been there, I'm your mother, I'm your father, I'll tell you how it is. You should be seen and not heard. I grew up with that one. I should be seen and not heard. Well, watch this. Cops are paying attention to me. So I wanted to add that about expectation as we move into inquiry over advocacy. How many of you are experts? Come on, don't even lie. How many of you got expert on your resume? This room is not a bunch of agilists. You guys, we got to go back to the trust thing. I don't think the camera's hitting the back of your head, so no one's like, that's Johnny, he raised his hand. No, we're expert-driven society, right? False expertise everywhere we go. Absolutely. You could, well, 10,000 hours. I got 10,000 hours. Except I slack off on Friday and I hate Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. Okay. Yeah, we have false expertise in our society every single day. So when I walk into a room, what's more valuable to my team than the advocacy of my opinion about my work? It's the questions I have about them. What do you need? How can I help you? As a coach, the first thing I say is, tell me why you need me as a scrum master or coach. Because I'm sure that you're certain that you guys are awesome sauce. It was on the room when I walked in. So I know that we're awesome sauce. So I know if I come in here with my little pen and check pad, with my PMP and my CSM, let me tell you why you're not a good team. I'm going to get killed. So Scrum says, hey, let's put retrospective first. Tell me what's working for you guys. Tell me what's not working for you guys. Tell me why I exist. Why am I valuable to you? How can I help you? Inquiry over advocacy every time. You walk into a room, you see your kids climbing up on top of one another to get to a jar on top of a shelf that you thought was a good place to hide the cookies. You walk in, you see what they're doing, you realize safety's an issue, right? So instantly, and the inquiry becomes, what the hell are you doing? And now they fall because of your response. And if you'd have left them alone, they'd have probably been like 6 monkeys jumping on a bed and been like 5 cookies, I'm good, right? So how I do my inquiry has an impact on my environment. Here's a danger of advocacy. Same scenario. Kids climbing on each other, getting into the cookie. I walk in, first thing I see is a major problem. I assume they're trying to get the cookies because they're not supposed to get the cookies and they're trying to sneak it because they've been trying to sneak stuff for 5 years. I got all these expectations. Man, I know these little. This is being recorded. Blank. I love them. I've loved them for 7 years. But I know them. So I walk in and I'm like, get down right now. What did I tell you guys? And one of them learned from me and goes, we just thought you were the greatest dad ever, so we were trying to get you a cookie. Advocacy will kill you because it gives me the ability to formulate a response that sets you up for total failure, catastrophic, just dysfunction. Family. Family's a great experiment for that. So inquiry, I could walk in and be like, hey, whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on to the wall when you're doing that. Now the safety's not an issue. What are you doing? They go, we're trying to get into cookies. I'm like, why don't you guys come and get me? Mom's not going to know. Let me show you this. I can reach them. And they go, I just figured out what a Scrum Master does. Inquiry over advocacy will save you every time. Actively listen. We all know what active listening is, right? Got a bunch of active listeners in here. Anybody know what the speech patterns of active listening sounds like? Active listening has clarity questions, right? Or what they call clarifying questions in some of the psychology study. Well, if I heard you right, help me understand, which usually means I think you're batshit crazy. Help me understand what you just said. Absolutely. But those types of clarifying questions will disarm the person. Another scenario that I've coached a few people on is if you've got that combative and that competitive relationship in the office, what if you approach that person with saying, look, I know that I have a tone or a way that typically does not allow us to communicate well. I'm trying to own that. I've got something to say to you that historically has blown up in my face over and over and over. And what I'd like to do is to be able to bring it up to you and kind of get off on a different foot. Your worst enemy in the whole world is going to do this. Okay, what? They actually disarm. They take a step back. You're supposed to come in the door blazing guns at me. Like, I know, but I went to Path to Agility, so. That was our marketing plug. But legitimately, we come back again to actively listening as clarifying questions. If I heard you correctly, if you and I are on the same page. I love Christopher's comment. Those of you that aren't familiar, please go to ChristopherAvery.com. Brilliant, brilliant man. Big fan, longtime friend, mentor. And Christopher said, the thing I like about talking to the people in this community is that we will spend 45 minutes just getting clear on what the hell we're talking about. And we will make a decision now. We can sit all day long and just get clear and say, well, when you say culture, you mean this. And I go, yeah, but in a leadership mindset, culture means this. If you were a software developer, all you're thinking is if, then, else, if, else, if, else. Oh, man, I'm going to kill these guys. You get to the very bottom and it says, if any of this is not true, else choose something else. And then we go, never mind. And they think, what a waste. But the truth is what we're trying to do is get the clarity, so that when we make a choice, the choice is almost made for us. Anybody ever have one of those flow state days where you're just, nothing you do will ever hurt? No matter where I go, I could walk on water right now. And then you screw it up by going by 7-Eleven and going, today's the day I should play the lottery. And now it's Monday again because you never win. You like, today was the day I would have won. And I ruined it by playing the lottery. What's wrong with me? I should have had an expectation about the lottery. So seek clarity before you respond to anything. And when you think at advocacy and we talk about knowing things, it's typically a response. I don't see advocacy as a personality trait or a character flaw. I see advocacy as a response to something else that's a little deeper inside you. And this is the exploration that I won't pin you guys on today. But a lot of times I see advocacy as what? How many of you pull up next to a 45-year-old guy in a sports car and you think, what, nice car? No, you think what? Compensation, right? This guy's, he's compensating for being old. What'd you think? I'm going to come over here. Okay. So there's a guy driving in a sports car, and he's 40-some years old, right? And you immediately think compensation for what he's doing. Advocacy is the same way. Advocacy generally is a compensation for either an esteem or a wrong indication or some assumption or some fear. What we know is that what the predecessor is, or what I'm trying to cover up, or what I'm trying to defend against is irrelevant, because knowing it does not make me a bad person. I'm brilliant. So are you. So if I'm in this state of advocacy, there may be something else. So I want to actively listen to what's behind it. They walk in every day going, I'm so sure of this. I'm like, I think you're brilliant. And they go, oh, so you like my ideas? I'm like, no, generally I disagree, but I just think you're brilliant. You know, you can disarm these people by understanding what's behind them. And the way to recognize something in someone else is to acknowledge that you have it. We all do. Even men have a certain amount of feminism. We didn't even have a Y chromosome until we were chosen. That comes later. So we all have a little feminine. We all have a little masculine. We have feminine side of the face, masculine side of the face in photography. We all have anxiety. We all have fear. Is a guy who says, I'm afraid of nothing will never be on my team. Because one, he's lying. And two, if he really was that guy, he'd be Iron Man and he'd be running the company. He'd be a billionaire and philanthropist. So when we get into this worry not being present, have you guys ever seen any Facebook users, Instagram users, Pinterest user type things? You see all those quotes online? And it says a guy who lives in the past suffers from depression. A guy who lives in the future suffers from anxiety. Be present. And then somebody says it's called the present for a reason. It's a gift. And I'm like, okay, you could have left off the last part. And after all, it's Monday. But ultimately, if I'm living in the past, I'm looking at depression. Why? Because I'm sorry, I'm remorseful. I'm not learning from my mistakes. I'm kicking myself for something I've done. If I'm living in the future, then I'm worried about an outcome that hasn't even occurred yet, but I just don't desire it. So what do you think happens to my present time decisions when I'm focused on a future outcome that I'm convinced is going to come true? I'm going to do things trying to control that outcome, which usually what? Causes the outcome. This happens in relationships. This happens in jobs. If you go to work every day worried about losing your job, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to lose your job because your boss is going to be like, why are you on my leg every morning at 8 o'clock with coffee, man? So, well, you keep asking me to come to your office at 2 o'clock, and I'm just trying to make a good impression there, boss. And the team is going, hey, happy new guy, you need to settle down a little bit. We don't deliver at that velocity here. We're agile. We know ourselves. You need to get on our team, buddy. Stop all this peak performance. And so worrying and not being in the present has behaviors that we have associated as acceptable outcomes or wins. And so we're going to focus constantly on the acceptable outcome, which has a predecessor of safety first. What is CYA? You guys agile coaches in the room? You guys project managers that are just being stuck with agile? Anybody an agile team member that thinks your coach is an idiot? I have to ask that question. I got no hands again. You guys must be like the greatest team members ever. Absolutely. No, my point being when we talk about this is that we have CYA responses actually erode our trust. Being an agile is easy when it's new and we've got a 200% return. They go, oh my gosh, we're delivering 10 times the software as we've ever delivered before, ever. I'm like, that's not because agile is great. That's relative to how much you sucked a week ago. Now, if you can sustain 200% improvement for the next year, I'll blame agile. But the truth is, we're just not used to delivering on that level. So agile has this huge value spike in the beginning. And then it slowly trickles off into a sustainable pace, sometimes back to status quo. This happens because of CYA responses. Because when something goes wrong, what do? Do you stand out in front and go, guys, I want to take full accountable responsibility for the main server going down in the stock exchange this morning? And they don't turn around and say, here's your certificate of appreciation for being agile. That's not what happens. No, I start doing this, right? CYA, and I'm not talking about pool chemicals. I'm talking about we're in trouble. I'm going to lose my sports car. CYA responses are where our job comes in as leaders and as managers, especially those of us that are in executive positions. All you guys in the room that are VPs. It's the fear of your response that is used as the justification for this. Why'd you send that email? Not because I really care, but I know what he's going to do if he finds out I did that. It's our ability to create the environment to say, hey man, when things go wrong, let's own it together as a team. And you're not going to do that unless I've created an environment where that's safe. Because safety is an illusion, right? But I'm a magician. I'm the VP. I can invent rules if it serves my purpose. By the time you find it in the HR binder, it will be irrelevant and over with. So I'm going to invent the rule. It's okay. If something goes down, it went down. Until we start accepting the fact that it's down, we're not actually fixing the problem. So your fear of a response to my response is actually what? Perpetuating the problem. Because while we're having this conversation, guess what? The server's still down, man. Can we get it up and then go talk about why you don't trust me? Let's do that. You coffee drinker? Yeah, somewhat. Okay, you can drink water if you like. Yeah, see, I'm an easygoing guy. We can go sit down and talk about why you don't trust me over a cup of water. And then the last thing is status quo value thinking. The last hidden impediment. When we have worry, we erode our team. When we advocate and don't ask questions, we actually alienate our team. When we do not share context with our team, they say what? Well, we're software developers and you're not. It's just that way. We're project managers and you're not. I got poor requirements, not because I allowed it to happen on my team, it's because we have a BA, and that's what they do. BAs are notorious for poor requirements. No, they're not. They're notorious for being blamed for it. It's not, yeah. If I was writing software, bad requirements is not a property of class BA, right? Or object BA. Of class manager. So this is the way we've always done it here, is not a value statement. Anybody agree with that? This is the way we've always done it here, is not valuable. How many of you could be in a dead heat sprint and somebody goes, yeah, but that's the way we always done it here, and you go, I'll be in my office, man. Because I know what comes next, right? Move, I'm going to talk about why we done it here. And then you go to your boss and you go, look at this ridiculous process, man. We do this, then this, then this, then this, then this. It's absolute insanity. And he goes, yeah, that was the first process I ever built when I started working here at your level. So where do we go? Inquiry. Hey, boss, you aware of this? Can you see what I see? I'm agile. I can put it in sticky notes on the wall. Now can you see what I see? He goes, no, I think that looks like the Mona Lisa. How can I help you? I'm going to get back to inquiry fast, right? But ultimately, you may find out that the guy who invented that process is still here. The guy who's in that space is still here. There's a way to approach them. Walk up, give them a certificate of appreciation for all the hard work you've done all these years, because your process is merely irrelevant, but it was very valuable when you created it. Thanks for your service, sir. That doesn't work either. It just sounds nice. That would actually blow up in your face. So how do we approach those situations? How do we challenge status quo thinking? First, ask ourselves, am I the one that values the way it's always been done here? Do I have any of those traits whatsoever? Because if I see it in someone else, what's that mean? It means I can recognize it. And if I can recognize it, what's that mean? I got it. It's in me. So that's why you look at children, they show them pictures, right? And they go, oh, look at the dolphins. And I'm like, don't look at that. Because the negative space of the dolphins ain't a dolphin. But the child's never seen that image before. Let's pretend it's Mickey Mouse. He's never seen Mickey Mouse before, so he sees dolphins. So status quo thinking puts us in a space of doing just that, where if you haven't seen it before, you can't see it. So how do I get you to see what I see? And if I never show it to you, are you ever going to be aware of it? So how do we get to that space? Business value becomes, where is it? There are no, metrics that are no longer a business value become only valuable to the evaluator. Think about that sentence for a moment. And you can download this. You can go read it again later because I know this sounds fancy, but it's really just kind of confusing. Metrics that are no longer of business value means they're valuable to what? Someone. Well, customer don't care about this metric. The business isn't improved because we have that metric. We're not working well because we have that metric. So why do we have it? Because it's the CTO's thing, man. It's his white elephant. He's been trying to pay back that technical debt for 15 years. Now he's a CTO. So what do? I want to get this guy here. I want to raise my inquiry. I want to not worry about the future. Get him present. Share context with him, because what does this give him the opportunity to do? Well, I'm walking in here certain that this process is irrelevant. What if I find out if it's responsible for 30% reduction of literacy in Africa? Well, I had no idea. I thought it was just a QA thing. I know, heady joke. But the evaluator has the opportunity to bring me here. So when I go into this space of status quo thinking, if I go in with the idea this thing must go, I'm already going to lose. Because I'm worried about a future where that thing exists. You go back to the previous one of worry, now we're creating that outcome that we don't want. If I walk into that same environment and say, help me understand why this thing is valuable, who's it's valuable to, and do I have any control over how we deliver that value? I mean, after all, we have iPhones now, and I'm pretty sure that thing was written on a typewriter. So is there a way to update it? And they might say, well, you got to understand that it's actually responsible for an increase in literacy across 8-year-old kids in Chicago. Oh, sweet. Okay, so how can I best support that process? Because ultimately, the problem usually becomes this part of the process right here. I'll tell you guys a story. How many of you have ever heard of the horses? I know you have. If you know me, have you heard of the horses? I'm surprised. Here's the way it works. There's a canning company that it cans goods for a living and then ships out all of its canned goods all the time. Big manufacturing plant, lots of lean, just in time, lots of buzzwords. They've been doing this for a long, long time. And they go to this ball because they're celebrating the first time we're ever going to have an automated canning machine in the plant ever. Now, bear in mind, we're not inviting the 30% of the people we laid off to buy this damn thing, okay? We all come into this meeting, and there's these two guys standing over there who's a delivery manager. And he's getting his punch, and it's not spiked, and he's standing there complaining because he's like, I just don't understand why when your order is ready on Monday and you work right across the street from me that I'm not allowed by policy to deliver to you. This is insanity. And the guy standing next to him, he goes, Bob, right? And he said, yeah. He's like, I'm one of the alumnus. He's like, I retired here. I used to have your job. He's like, you're talking about the fact that you have to do all those short runs like late in the week, right? He's like, yeah, it makes no damn sense to me at all. He goes, man, that's been a problem for 25 years. I don't get it. And there's this little old guy right over here, all white hair, because his punch is spiked, so he's holding on to the tree, right? And he is laughing and laughing and laughing, because guess what his job was 40 years ago? And he said, I remember when we created that policy. And he said, what are you talking about? He goes, it's the horses, man. He said, if I did all my short runs on Monday and Tuesday, they were too exhausted to make their Friday deliveries across town. So we made a policy that said short runs get done at the end of the week so that we can care for the horses and keep them healthier. That's just the way we've always done it around here, so it never changed when we got trucks. Status quo value thinking allows for inquiry when leadership is present. And you can know when are you the guy that's holding on to the horses. Because after all, you spent most of your life with people telling you to hold your horses. So you give me horses, now I don't want to give them up. That's a problem. That's a stretch, I know. I love you guys. You laugh at my jokes. So the last thing I'll do here, we are coming up on, what do we have till 3, right? Yeah. Oh, sweet. Everybody got their water? If you guys want, do you want to go through some of this on the second page? We have the time. I'm a little ahead of schedule. I surprised myself. Not enough jokes, I guess. I'll think of some. Subjective and subjective reality. And please feel free, guys, if you got a comment, a question, an example, a story, insights, you want to heckle the guy in the brown suit, please raise your hand. We'll have someone bring a mic over and we'll talk about this. I'm not asking anyone to share anything they're not comfortable sharing, so I'm just going to talk about what I do when I go through this process with my internal mentees, with my students, and sometimes with clients in smaller groups, which has actually turned out sometimes very hostile, which is why I feel qualified as an expert to talk about this, okay? But objective and subjective reality, it says write down a time when something went wrong. How many of you have had something that's gone wrong? What happened when things went wrong? What's the first thing you did? Who were the kids that were here last year with us? You guys remember the responsibility process? Somebody crashes into your car, the first thing you do when something goes wrong is you go where? Denial. You did not just hit my sports car, man. And then once you look at it and you go, you did just hit my sports car. Then we move into blame. Now, I'm blaming you. What are you going to do about it? And what do you do? Well, I couldn't help it, man. It's only 2 inches of visibility and you were driving 130 miles an hour in the snow. So we go to justify and I go, yeah, you're kind of right. You know, I guess having an accident is exactly what would have occurred. Because now that I share some of this blame and I'm shaming myself, I want to make sure that the incident is now justified. So I'm doing that denial, blame, justify, shame cycle. Once you and I agree that it's justified, we have an appropriate insurance response for it, then we start moving into this whole obligation state. Well, I guess we have to trade insurance, we have to call the cops, have to, don't want to, and we're going through that whole process. Same things here. When that thing went wrong for you, did you recognize you going to denial, to blame? No, that server did not go down. We can't afford that. Oh my, who did it? Because when I get called in at 2 o'clock, you're going with me. So that denial, blame, shame process starts to play out, that control cycle thinking, which puts us back into that CYA state, right? That's the responsibility process that happens to you every single time something goes wrong. And when you leave this place tonight and you fill out your amazing evaluation reports about my talk, now when you guys leave, if something goes wrong, I'm going to go to denial. The difference is I'm not going to say anything because I'm going to be aware of it. So when this chair falls down, I'm like, that didn't just happen. I'm not going to say nothing. And I'm like, well, man, we got to kill somebody for that. Still not going to say nothing. Then I think, well, I guess I probably could have done it myself by not standing on the darn thing. I'm going through justify. So the idea is not to prevent your brain from having all this stuff we're talking about, because it's what makes you human. Giraffes don't ditch their spots all of a sudden when they don't camouflage them. They don't laugh at each other because your spots are smaller than my spots. It's just that's what makes you a giraffe. If you deleted these things from you, you'd no longer be human, and you know what? I like you. Please stay in our species. That'd be great. So what's that mean? It means that when I have one, I want to be aware of it. If I'm aware of denial, shut up. If I'm aware of blame, don't talk. If I'm aware of shame and justify and obligation and all these things, I'm just responding to a fear that my boss here might get mad because he got promoted finally. He started coming to work on time. Now he's my boss. So I'm going to use you an example again, right? Congratulations, by the way, man. Good to have you. So now he's my boss, and I'm actually going through this whole cycle down here of negativity and control cycle, not because I hate myself for what happened, but because I'm afraid of what an authority may respond and do that I will not be appreciative of, like lose my job, etc. So until I process these things of denial and blame and shame and justify and respond to an event that hasn't actually occurred yet, that if I ran around blaming everybody would probably cause me to create that event. Let's just get away from all that, be self-aware, and just breathe for a minute until I go, okay, how can I help you get the server back up? And they go, wow, we're really glad you're on our team. Remember all those times you wrote me up for being late, son? That's the cycle. We'll get into that. But that's the point, is that typically when we start to respond from these states, when we perceive something has gone wrong, we actually start to cause the outcome we want to avoid. So I ask you this, how did you respond? In that example you thought in your mind, how did you respond when that thing went wrong? Did you panic? You didn't go to your boss and be like, we need to talk about this right now. You called your friend and went, dude, you got to help me get out of this. Hide me. That's my favorite one. Another way you may have responded differently. So as of today, is there another way you could have responded that may have actually not created the outcome you didn't want? And this is some of the exercise of self-awareness about right and wrong and subjective and objective reality. Subjective reality says servers down is wrong. But no, it's not. Server down is true. Right and wrong aren't even a Boolean value. I'm an agile IT guy. I know. So it's just true that the server is down. If we can accept and agree that truth is what we're talking about here, then we have the ability to respond to this very, very quickly, because there's no byproduct required HR process tangential response to something being wrong. So if I can get rid of right and wrong and just agree that the server's down is true, then there is no fear or consideration of how some external entity is going to respond, and we start talking about how to solve the problem instead. This is what Agile's all about. Fail fast. Then when the guy walks in, he goes, hey, why is the server down? You go, oh, that was intentional, man, sprint zero. He goes, what are you talking about? You guys been a team for a year. I'm like, I know, new feature set, PO. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. We got all kinds of excuses. Please don't do what I just said. The beginning of that was valuable. The second thing I told you is a good way to get fired. So looking at number 2 in expectations. So are there any thoughts about objective reality or subjective reality? We're talking about true and false, acceptance and allowance, or subjective evaluation. If you really break it down, we're talking about please don't evaluate things. Stop evaluating people. You come to me and say, well, you have long hair. I'm like, I used to. But you have big feet. Guess which one of us can fix? So evaluation is not valuable at all, because evaluation assumes that something is wrong. Any questions about that? I looked right into a light bulb. Ow. Number 2, expectations. Do you set expectations? Yes or no? Hands up. Parents, come on, raise your hands. Project managers, raise your hands. Control freaks, both hands, come on. Yeah. See, we spent an hour together. I started getting more honesty. This thing started, they were like, whatever, I got cookie hands, man. I ain't talking about you. Has someone set expectations of you? How did you feel obligated to these expectations? When someone comes to you and says, the expectation on this team is to do this, and you're like, I don't do yoga, man. I can't do that. But now I feel like I have to. You guys value trying, right? Then when I come in and do something wrong, and I go, look, man, I'm trying. All right, Billy. They said, why are you letting them get away with that? That's our culture. How do you feel when you're obligated to these expectations? You guys feel when someone gives you expectations and have to, don't want to, you get that tightness, that, why do I work here thing? Do I really want to work with this guy? So instead of confront him, I'm going to go around him and try and undermine his entire career? No, we don't do that. We're powerful leaders. We don't ever think that way. Note that when a situation of negotiation agreements. So when these expectations were presented to me, could have I used some of the awareness of these 7 techniques to say, hey, I'm really advocacy about this thing. I want to be an advocate to the fact that I don't want to do what you just said. So is there a technique and inquiry? Is there a way for me to say, hey, I understand that you have these expectations of behavior. I'm assuming that means because there's an outcome or a product or a byproduct, something we're either trying to achieve or something else we're trying to prevent. Can you help me? Because I might know a more amicable way, more effective way, more quality way, a very subjective more here, for me to actually provide that prevention to you without having to do it your way. You good with that? You guys understand how that mental cycle plays out? Now, how you do it with your soft skills, I hope you guys come back to my blog or something and tell me how it went, because that's one I tend to screw up. I'm like, expectations, who the hell are you? Yeah. No. But really trying to understand, if I'm seeing expectations, we're probably trying to predict an outcome or we're probably trying to prevent something. So can I see the control cycle thing that's triggered this? And if you'll let me see it, can I offer my opinion about how we might mitigate that more effectively, where the team doesn't hate you for what we're doing or blame the process? Those are opportunities for negotiations. Competition and leadership. This is an opportunity for you guys to note a time when you felt like you were in competition for something. I got to tell you, if you can ever get yourself set up for a promotion you don't really want, you almost always get it. They come to you and go, hey, we need a new chairman of the board for that not-for-profit you've been involved in. And the first thing you think is, nah, really, man. I paid my dues. I got my PDU and my dinner. You want me to what? But if I went in there and said, I want to be the president of this organization, there's some other guy that goes, no, 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 I want to be the president. If you want to be the president, it's probably because you got an agenda. You actually attract all this competition because of your own mindset. So can I walk into something that I really want and pretend like I don't want, just enough to show you that I'm interested, that assures that I can get it, and you go, damn it, I'm dating my job. All of a sudden we have an integrated life. There is no work-life balance. I just figured out how to explain integration in my book. Damn. Context. Context is about sharing reality, right? Can we share context? What if you and I don't work well together because you're always late and now you're my boss? So I got 2 reasons to not like you, right? But I know I'm going to interact with you about 3 times a week, yeah? Can you and I agree that I'm going to go ahead and have my hair like I do and I'm going to go ahead and ride a motorcycle and well, you don't like motorcycle riders because you don't like that high school kid that dates your daughter, whatever, and you associate me with him. Can we share context for the next hour? Can you join me in this room today? Can we work on what we know is valuable now and really not care who we are when we go our separate ways at the end of this meeting? If we can do that, then we have now eliminated all of the evaluation limitations and we have 100% access to the power of the fact that we're human. And human power is crazy town. If you don't believe me, go to New York and ask yourself, how long would it take me to stack bricks? Human power is some of the most abundant energy in the world, and the only limitation to it is the same thing that is the source of its power. That's your mind. If you understand self-awareness in your mind, you have access to the greatest power of all, free will and human thought. And when you collaborate as a manager, just get out of the way, man. At least I would. And then I hope you're working in an industry that doesn't have safety first protocols, right? So we look down here at advocacy and inquiry. Here's an opportunity again to ask yourself and say, hey, am I one of those guys that walks in and says, hey, this is what I know. This is what's got to happen. Am I rigid and unaware, unopen? Am I preventing people from giving me feedback? Am I responsible for an office perception that I'm not approachable, even though if I ask you and say, hey, I know I'm your boss. I know it's evaluation time, but I'd like you to give me feedback because I'm agile. And what do you say? No, man, you're great. Can you believe he asked me to tell him that he sucks? No way, man. So ask yourselves, am I a person that can be approached? And if I'm not, could I go to work tomorrow and tell my team and say, hey, guys, look, if we did a retrospective, I'm asking for some trust here. I'm asking for some space here. You might try this first with your family. Because if your family disagrees, you just go, oh, shut up, you never change, and you shut the door, right? You go to work, you can't do that. So you might want to run the experiment in a safer environment with your family because, well, who cares what they think of you anyway? They're family, right? Can't wait till you guys have working relationships like that. They'll be powerful. But the idea here is to go to them and say, hey, if I had you guys do a retrospective on the perfect Scotty, what would be true, what would be false, and what would be indifferent? And that's a little more of a literal sense of the conversation, but really what we're talking about is, will you guys please have a family intervention with me? If you don't call it that, it sounds a little dangerous now. You're like, what do you mean intervention? I'm not a drug addict. I'm like, no, you're a Scotty addict. You're absolutely addicted to yourself, almost to the point that you're unaware of your impacts on the people around you. Holy cow, what a bunch of insight. Now, I don't know if you guys go home and look in the mirror and tell yourself stuff like that, but I'll tell you that if you're strong enough to stand there and go, you know what, this is something that I do. I'm going to go get my closest peer group, or heaven forbid, my mastery group. If you create a mastery group of people that you can sit together with, 4, 5, 6 of you, and say, hey, let's get real. Because if I'm unconscious about behavior and you're not in a position to tell me, and these guys certainly aren't going to tell me, then how am I ever going to grow if I don't allow myself to be open to that constructive feedback? And then can I be responsible and accountable and 100% own the environment that I'm asking my peers to participate in, not the environment I'm asking my peers to create for me? Because let's face it, if I'm not open to feedback as kind of a general nature, I'm not going to let you create an environment where you're going to give me feedback. Because I'm going to feel like a guy standing there with an apple on his head while we try and discover archery. So those are the kinds of things when you can get into this advocacy and inquiry and asking, how have you observed this in your team members? Remember, if I can observe it in someone else, what's true? They're wrong, or I've got this. Yeah. Bill, probably one of arguably the smartest people I've ever met. I mean, this guy, Bill's genius. Says the world is a hologram. I think he says hallucination is his word. I used hologram when I restated it. But he said the world is a hallucination. There's only inside you. There is no outside you. My evaluation of the distance to that chair isn't being processed by my brain. It's being processed by the information fed to my brain through a whole bunch of filters. That color brown is probably not the same color brown. Believe me, I've had conversations about the way I dress, and I'm like, I love this purple shirt. And she goes, what color do you think that is? And I thought she'd say something like plum, and she's like, that's blue. Oh, so I know I have these filters. So I can acknowledge those filters and work in a space that I allow them. The second to last one we talk about is staying present. Remember, we talk about present. If I have anxiety, what do I want to look for? Outcomes that haven't become true yet that I'm already suffering from. I don't want to hit myself with a hammer because I don't want a broken toe. Right? So hitting myself with a hammer because it feels good to stop is stupid. Right? So why would I create a hurt toe to try and prevent it? So if I know I don't want a hurt toe, I'm not going to worry about having one because I'm not crazy enough to go hit myself with a hammer. That's what we're talking about with future tense. As soon as you take future tense, that's that horizontal responsibility, that vertical personal accountability. I'm at free will and choice, doing whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want, with who I want. But I have commitments and ethics and behaviors. I am who I am. I want to know the difference between this right and this wrong. And I'm going to attract people who share those values with me so that I can build a high-performing team, not with any single person in the world, but with the right people. Jim Collins in Denver, if you guys have ever seen the book Great by Choice, by all means go read it. Jim Collins made a comment and he said, your people are not your greatest asset. He said the right people are. And instantly my brain went, oh my gosh, we're talking about people who share my values. That's that vertical accountability that the Agile community, in my experience, that has avoided. Now, let me restate, not avoided. It's just not as well documented as the free will stuff, right? We're not asking you to be happy hippies, but we want you to be complete total control of your own future and your destiny. And if we don't talk about this vertical ethics piece, then what makes me think for a minute that my executive VPs with 40 years experience each are going to allow me to just trust whatever we build? Well, how do I know you're aligned to what we value? What's our strategy? What's our ethics? This horizontal only approach leaves us amoral. So let's get aligned with our morals and ethics. Let's share that. And if we don't, let's be real about that we don't. Because you're not wrong for what you believe. It just may not be the same thing that I have. The transparency in that gives us that vertical trust, courage, assurance. Now, by all means, go do what you do best. I can trust that. And that's what we're talking about with this whole get present, stay transparent. The question here says, have you ever worked with somebody that blamed them for past? I have to reread that. I'll update that before I post it. I don't think that's written in English. Have you ever worked with somebody and blamed them for the past that hindered your ability to work in the present? And so I'll restate that because now I know what the hell I was talking about. Ultimately, have you ever worked with somebody, not just from an expectation, but someone who felt wronged in the past? Something you had done they don't forgive you for. Now you're going to try and work with them in the present, and they're completely unaware of how their own behavior is creating the reality. And so there's a constant blame cycle. If we don't clean up the past and get present, there is no future. And if I try and get to present before I clean up the past, we're going to kill each other. That's a reality of every relationship you've ever going to build, I promise you. clean up the past, get present, plan the future. Allow that in cleaning up the past and planning or talking about the present, you may not have a future. Or you're going to have an expectation of a future and suffer a reality break, and now we're doing the expectation you can't change or grow thing. I need you to be exactly what I expected you to be. And now we have this tortuous relationship. We talked about tortuous last year. That was my favorite word last year. This year it's a different one, but it's more of a sentence enhancer, so I won't say it. I'm just kidding. And then status quo thinking. Status quo thinking says, ever hear somebody say that's the way we do it? Is there value in preventing a response to change a culture in the organization? How many of you work for a company, or let me say, how many of you have ever worked in any kind of an organization or not-for-profit or classroom or sports team or family or sat around and had tea with imaginary stuffed animal friends where it was actually valued to prevent change, but it looked like this? We absolutely want you to be in control of your future. So I love your idea. We're not going to give you a budget, but if you want to go create a small little community, talk about it, build some respect around it, some movement around it, we'd love to see you guys do what you do. Now you're off and you're building your stuff and you're doing all this great stuff and you bring back this great idea and then they kill it. Well, no, we absolutely value change in your ideas. I didn't say we ever had any anticipation we were going to ever install any of that stuff in this company, but we definitely wanted to give you the playground to go and invent it, which is great. Let's be honest, it's not wrong, it's not evil, it's not like an evil plan. The idea is that we've got to have some kind of accountability at our level as to the organization and how we change it and how we brand it, et cetera. So the playground is super valuable. But if none of them ever get implemented, then we want to go back and talk about this vertical again and say, hey, how come no idea has ever been done? And get to the root cause of those types of things. Status quo has things in place that says, we know we're not going to change it here, but we're allowed to go and play with these ideas. Well, that's only good for so long. I get a short-term morale boost. People feel valuable. But when you come with 10, 12, 15, 20 ideas over 5 years and nobody ever really takes your idea and lets you run with not even one, how long do you think your tenure is going to be at this organization? Yeah, not long. Not because it's evil and it's there's clouds over it every morning, even though it's sunny on the other side of the street, but just because it's not in alignment with me. I'm a different kind of person than this environment has. And that's where the self-awareness of alignment comes into play to say, am I really where I'm supposed to be? Am I best aligned to who I am as a person? And it's through all this deep dive self-awareness stuff and becoming aware of your responses, your triggers, your views, your understanding, and accepting them as just your triggers, responses, and views and things, and not things that are right or wrong. And that's where we get into self-awareness. And this is very key. So I'll take you back here. We talked about worry. We talk about owning the ends and not the means. And we'll talk about the beginning is knowing. The means is a journey, and the end is a new beginning. And that's the whole point. Stay aware, stay open, keep going, connect to us, talk to us, share your story. We love it. And I'll be around today if you guys have additional questions. Thanks for coming down.